and welcome to Emerald Meadows, your one-stop channel for all things RC quilting, and 3D printing. Today we're going to be talking about a really nice quilted wall hanging project that my wife and I are working on. And this is, we've tried to, we have two grandchildren that are going to be doing their first communion this year. And we thought, wow, we wanted to do something unique and different. So we decided to make this wall hanging here. And we thought we'd try to do something like a stained glass effect. And that's what we kind of came up with. We have a little wall hanging with a cross and a little saying on the bottom about the date and time. And we're going to describe how we did that project. Now we did some work on this, and we discovered, hey, synagogues and mosques also have stained glass windows. So what we've done is up on the website. There'll be links below. There will be templates. We've used cross because we're Christian, but we also put the Star of David. And we also put the star and crescent moon for Islam. So all faiths have stained glass. We thought, well, listen, we could share this and let everybody participate in this project, because actually when we looked up stained glass in other religions, synagogues and mosques have some of the most beautiful stained glass I've ever seen in my life. So definitely something that can go across faiths and share with other colleagues. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we used our fusible web to make the pattern and our starting point, and we're going to discuss how we did our little name embellishment over there in the corner, and not much. It's pretty straightforward stuff. The binding, we'll give you a reference to our other video on how we did the binding. We pretty much follow the same process, and even to this day I still forget how to do it, and I have to go back to that video, because to be honest with you, one of the reasons I did that first video was I always forget. So anyway, I'll send you a link to doing the binding and the reference, and how we did this stained glass effect with our satin stitch. So we used a satin stitch to create that stained glass effect. So let's get started, and let's start talking about how we placed our pieces on the fabric to give us that stained glass effect, and move on from there. So let's take a closer look. Okay, let's take a look now at some of the details of how we're doing this. First of all, we started with our fabric, and we used a batik. We used batiks in a lot of different colors, and we pressed on. We've taken a certain amount. I think we took about these were fat quarters, and I think we took a half of a fat quarter, and we put some fusible web on the back. We've been using the Wonder Under, and that seems to work really good. Yeah, two-sided fusible web. I just find it easier to work with, and we can mark it. So we've taken a variety of colors, and we fused the fusible web on the back. And now we're in the process of cutting out our shapes. For these, I'm going to call it kind of a quilt-as-you-go type project. We normally start out with this Simply Crazy template that we use. It's a pentagon, an off-shaped pentagon. And what this allows us to do, it allows us to start and gives us a kind of an odd shaped pattern as we move through it. And since, as we mentioned in our introduction, this is kind of, we're going for a stained glass effect, we thought that this would be a good way to start. It's something that we've already done before with our placemats. This is a group of placemats that we've made on a quilt as you go, and we start out with the crazy shape in the middle and then kind of work out from there. So that's how we're doing the stained glass project with our different colors. And once we've laid out our first piece, and we've adjusted size based on whatever we felt was appropriate, and once we put our first piece on, We then start cutting the fabric around, and in this case here, I'm going clockwise. So I'm always going in the same direction around the fabric. So after I put my center piece on, I went to my yellow piece, and I'll show you in a close-up exactly as to how we place this on and pressed it, and we're going to continue around for the whole project. Let's take a closer look. We're just working on two at the same time here. So we started out with our red piece here, which was our starting from our crazy starting package, and then I put on a piece of yellow and a piece of orange. Now let's take a look at how we're going to put on the next piece. In this case here, it's going to be purple. What I simply do is I lay the piece down and I butt it up. Now, as we've done in our other quilt and go, we would sew this on with a stitch and then simply press it back over in this direction. Because we're going to be doing a special stitch to give that stained glass effect, we felt that there was too much fabric there, and that's why we're using the fusible web to put it in place while we stitch over top of the special stitch afterwards, and we'll see that a little bit later in the video. So now I take a ruler and I simply mark along the line as good as you can. I mean, you want it to be as straight as you can, but this is not rocket science. And make a line with my pencil, and I simply come down now to this piece here, to this angle, then draw a line. Okay, and now I'm going to cut along that line, if I can see it. One cut, and it's really hard to see the lines on this purple fabric because it's so dark, but we'll see how we did here. Okay, so now we have our purple pattern on. It's pretty close. It doesn't have to be right on. You see that it's off a bit. I peel my backing off and I lay it in place, and I take my pressing cloth. We use this Teflon cloth, and we press her down. And this will fix it in place. Now, every fusible web have different instructions. Just follow the instructions on your label, on your packaging. And this one here requires us to press it down for about 10 seconds. And we're done, and we're ready now to do the next piece. And we're going to continue on doing the rest of our stained glass window, going around in a circular pattern, following the same instructions. And we may vary the width of this fabric to kind of give it a little bit of variety and changes in looks. Okay, now that we've finished putting our stained glass type fabric on our project using the fusible web, and we also put the cross on using the same fusible web process, we decided not to put the lead effect on first before we put the cross on, because we were concerned that there'd be bumps, maybe a bit too bumpy when we put the cross on. As mentioned, there's also a Crescent and Star for Islam and a Star of David for people of the Jewish faith. So you can use any of those motifs in the middle. So now that we have all this done, we're now ready to start our quilting, and we're going to be using a black background because we thought that that would blend well, because we're going to be using a black thread for the lighting effect, and that'll maybe make it invisible. However, a light colored background could be used as well and could give you a nice design. So with the spray glue, we used a fabric spray glue, the DIT spray adhesive that you can get at most fabric stores, and sprayed that on, and then placed our project on top. It's now dry, and we're now ready to start quilting. Now here we're using a satin stitch and we've had to play around with that in order to get the right width, to get the correct effect for stained glass. You'll have to experiment with the satin stitch on your machine to see which works best for you. Okay, our stitching is done, and what we're going to do now is we've trimmed it off, and we did a stitch around the outside. We do a bit of a basting stitch just to hold everything together so these edges don't flap, because we're getting ready now to put on our binding. And for those of you that have seen an earlier video on how to do the binding, I don't think we need to go into a lot of details. We'll just show you the finished product. And if you wish to learn more about the binding, please refer. I'll put a link into the previous video on doing the binding. But we're not gonna pillowcase this project. We're gonna bind it. In sewing, the satin stitch on my wife's machine was a little bit better, so I stopped using my older Husqvarna, which is a hand-me-down, and moved over to my wife's, and it did a lot better job. But as with any time that you're doing the stitching, I mean, it's a thread, so you're going to have some gaps. And what we do to fill that in, I don't even think people will notice, but we like to do a bit of filling in some of the areas where the black didn't get full coverage, and we do that covering with permanent black markers, or blue, or whatever color you have. We have quite a few different colors of these, and we've used these on a lot of projects to kind of fill in, so you're not running a lot of thread in one area, and if it's just a small space, the marker is good, especially for these applique type projects. Things you're not going to wear, this will do the trick. Let's take a closer look. See here, there's some green thread showing underneath. This is what I did on an earlier machine, and we just take the black felt marker and we can just fill some of that in, and it is perfect. You don't need to do a lot of extra stitching on there to do repairs. And there's some on this side, and you can see the difference. This was done on the older machine, and there's a lot more gaps in it, and you can see that these are done on my wife's newer machine, and you can see it's a beautiful satin stitch. It did such a great job. So we're going to go through now and finish doing our touch-up repairs, blackening in wherever we need to blacken, and we are going to get ready to put our border on. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the steps we're going to do before we put on our binding. One of the things that we did along the top is we've added these little pockets. Okay, we basically took some 3-inch fabric, black again, added a bit of tab on both sides, and folded over and pressed down about a ½ inch on each side. We're going to press that down, and then we're going to fold this in half and press it again, and this is going to make up our pocket, and we're going to put a little rod in there so that it can hang on the wall. Then what we do is we take these pockets, and we take the folded part. We take this folded part, and it is facing away from the edge so that all the raw edges are at this end here, all the raw edges, and we are going to sew our binding right over top of this, and we're going to reinforce, so our pockets for our rod is going to be sewn right into the binding, and then we're going to hand stitch along the bottom edge here to hold everything in place so we can put our rods in. So that's what we are going to do next, is apply our binding material to the outside, and that will reinforce our pockets for our rods for our hangers. And we did the same thing with a little label on the bottom here. We're going to put our binding on the outside of this and reinforce everything in, and do a bit of hand sewing right along this edge here to hold everything in place. So let's put our completed our projects. One was done by my wife, and the other was done by myself, and they look pretty good. We hand sewed down. We did our pockets in the corner so that our our binding actually held a lot of these parts in place, and we put in the pockets on the top here for supporting our rods so that they will hang up on the wall. Well, we hope you enjoyed this this project, and we hope we provided you with enough details so that you can venture out and try the project yourself. As I said, the templates for the cross and the Star of David and the Crescent and Star for the three religions that I'm familiar with will be located up on the website. I'll have a link to that. That's a public domain website. You can go in there and check out anything you want. There's not much up there, but hopefully things will grow over time. So if you like this video, please say like, and if you want more of these types of videos, please subscribe to my channel. Hope you enjoyed this multi-faith project, and I encourage you all to go out and do one on your own. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time at Emerald Meadows.